Hi there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. We are live again. Last Monday was the last time that we worked on our project, which is building a chatbot using the Microsoft Bot framework and also using Logic apps to make it smarter, to add skills to our chatbot. So we want to run this chatbot in Microsoft Teams. That's what we were getting into last time. So last time, one of the things that didn't work out was adding the bot to our demo tenants. We have made a change to the Teams administration to allow side loading of custom apps, and I can tell you that it took a bit of time, but eventually we can now add the bot to our demo tenant as well. I'll show you in a little bit. We're gonna continue to work on our bot from there. And we pretty much gave up last Monday when we were trying to improve our dialogue logic a little bit, because we do not, we want to authenticate our user, but up until now, when you started a new dialogue, it would give me a token verification response, and the original intent was lost. So we are trying to find a way for to keep the intent around, and that we can actually handle the intent after we are logged in. And that's where we will continue today. But first, let me show you that we now have this bot running in our demo tenant. So I'll switch over here to my desktop and let me move to our demo tenants. And I have Teams open when I close this browser window, and you can now tell that we have this bot here ready and available. And of course, since it's the first time that we are interacting with this bot, we get a conversation update, and you'll notice that we get this welcome message. For some reason, the icon is not correct, so I'm not completely sure why that is. Let's see, because if we see here, we can actually see the icon is correct. So one thing that could be the case is that in the bot channels registration, so let's take a look there, we have not supplied the icon for our bots in the settings, but I thought we did that. Oh, we didn't. As you can tell, this is the default icon, so let's update it to be the icon that we want, which is this purple pinkish one, and we have saved it, and it will take a little bit of time before it shows up here, but eventually we will see the icon show up here, so that will fix the icon. So now we have this bot running here. Let's go back to where we left off last time. So to recap a little bit what we did Monday, we have this waterfall dialog here that has a few steps. The first is the login step, where we spawn the OAuth prompt. This will show a login button for the user if the user is not signed in. And if the user is signed in or was already signed in, it will move to the parse token step. And this step gets an activity of type token response. or what result is a token response, but we have a token verify activity or an event activity. We do not have the message activity anymore, so that's the issue that we're trying to solve. Then in the parse token step, we verify the token that we received, and then we move on to the command step, and there we want to check what the actual intent is of the user by recognizing the intent through Lewis. And in order to do that, we need to have a message activity, or more specifically, we need to have a token, a turn context with a message activity. We do not have that, so we were trying to recreate a turn context. So if we go down a little bit here in the parse token step, we were trying to do that. Oh no, it's one step further. So what we actually did in the login step, we take that message activity and store it in our step context. And the step context is saved as part of our conversation state. So when we move on to the next step, the parse token step, we check if we have this message here. If we don't have a message for whatever reason, we can always prompt the user with a simple message requesting what the user wants to do. But otherwise, we just move on to the next step where we get the message from the result. So we complete the previous step with the result being the message activity, so we can get it back as a from the result. So we have this message activity. So now we need for this Lewis recognizer, recognize async, we need to have a context, a turn context. We cannot use the current turn context because the current turn context will not have a message, because it's an event activity or whatever is not the initial activity that triggered the login dialog at the very beginning. So we want to reconstruct a turn context here using that message activity, and then insert that, use that for the recognize async. However, this throws a null reference exception, and that's where we are stuck right now. So let's run it like it is right now. We were trying to do some stuff with the delegating, but it really doesn't matter. So let's get rid of that. And let's show you what the actual issue is. So our bot is running. We'll take the bot emulator here, and we start a new connection, a new conversation. Then we say hi. So hi is actually the message that we want to process, but I may need to sign in first. All right. So I click sign in and I sign in. This is the default experience when we are not signed in, so the initial step. Once we're signed in, so we went through this parse token step, but since we already had the message, we jump to the command step. So here we again have the initial message, and if we inspect it, you'll see that the text actually says hi. So that was the initial message that we sent to the bot. And now we want to create a turn context out of it and do the recognize, and that's where we fill with the object reference not set in as an object. And basically we create a pretty standard turn context, so I'm not really sure what's going on here, and we gave up Monday, and today let's continue to investigate how we can create a proper turn context, or how we can use this recognize async in combination with the OAuth prompts. So basically let's start by searching if we can find anything in relation to OAuth prompts and the recognize async. Maybe this will help. I do not see that. Original question. This is the answer to our question. This is just a sample. It was too much to go for. Maybe we find something in the initial GitHub. Issues. Maybe in the samples. Let's pull that out. It's experimental. Not something right off. New state management. So much. road seems to lead nowhere. So what's maybe going on? So it's trying to run the recognize internal async, which eventually does a trace activity async on the turn context. I believe that's where it fails. Although the strange thing is that the stack trace doesn't mention something else. Let's take that out of here so we have it for reference. Let's put it there. So basically we have two stack traces. Turn contexts with the send activities through adapter. And so we have this command step that's calling the recognize async. That calls the recognize internal async. That calls send activity. At line 385. Really. So in this Lewis recognizer, we don't have a line 385. So it must be a different version. And let's see if we can browse the history. Browsing specific commit already, I think. Let's go from start. Lewis recognizer. 33. Okay. 385. Yeah, and we get to this particular line. The thing that I cannot understand is that this is calling the trace activity async, but the exception is actually from send activity async. It really does not make sense at all. Maybe we can pick another version in history. So I took this one previously, so let's now pick the one from June 6. And inspect the same. Sorry, to pick the Lewis recognizer. 09385. 385. No. And here it already mentions trace activity, so that can't be it. But let's pick another version. And here it already is trace activity. So for some reason the compiler might think it's send activity for some reason. I don't really understand why. But we can take a look at the turn context. But first, let's go to the main version. And then let's check out turn context, libraries, builder, and turn context, and then find the trace activity. Hey. Okay. That's weird. Okay. Maybe we should make it easier for ourselves and let's clone this thing so that we can take a look at it locally and better navigate. Already cloned it earlier, so repos, uploader, and let's open it up. Right. I want to take a look at the libraries. Let's collapse everything. The bot builder. Lewis. And Lewis recognizer. 385. And it's an extension methods. Okay, and this is indeed doing a send activity on the turn context, so that's probably why we see it as a send activity instead of as a trace activity. So what is it tracing actually? So it's tracing name, who's recognizer, some trace info, some object, this trace type, which is a constant, trace label is constant. Okay. That's going to turn context activity that create trace. creating a trace from the activity that should changes that should actually work still, because it's just the same activity that we serialized, or there may be some serialization issue. So here we get to the return contexts. Example here. So we get an activity which is a trace activity. We're looking at the it's going to be send activities. This one. It's going to be bots. Send activities through adapter. Then in line 3, 5, 7. This is probably no. Maybe we need to copy over the turn state. I think I've done that before. In this project, obviously. Here, let's close this. Close this. And I believe there's no way for these contacts. No. Bots. There. Here's what I actually do something similar. So we create this new turn context, and then for all the state in the current context we copy it over. So that's step contexts. So we copy the state. Would this be the missing link? still feels a little bit dirty. Okay. Let's try again. So now we type hi and we want hi to be remembered after we sign in. The sign in URL is not correct, which can be solved by restarting the emulator most of the times. Let's see if it works. Yeah, this URL looks better. There we go. So now we create this new turn context based on the initial message that we stored in the step context before that sign in button was shown. And now we copy over the state. So this is one of the keys. Now I connect the client. I believe that's the thing that we actually need. Conversation state. This time it looks like it worked. And it does. So now we get back the intents based on the message that we sent prior to the sign in. And now the bot will just do who or not. Could be that we do not have a connected service result. In this particular case, let's just skip through this. I'll just say that something went wrong. For example, what can I say is something that is recognized. This time the conversation will restart from the login, or it should. Perhaps because something went wrong. It's not. What is it doing? We actually get, let's set a breakpoint at the turn. So inside our bots we have this on turn async, which is executed each time the bot receives a message from the user. There we go. So we received a message. Let's see if we get here. There we go. And it will take our dialog state. Probably. The dialog state has not been destructed. We can also take a look at the on begin dialog and on continue dialog. And we get on the on continue, so we have an existing dialog. And what does the dialog look like? So we are in the OAuth prompts. Which is kind of weird. Should show the sign in button again, probably. Let's get rid of this thing. We'll just restart the conversation. And what can I say? Let's get rid of those breakpoints and those. So now it will start a new login dialog or a new main dialog, and then that will start a new OAuth prompts dialog. Now we're signed in. If the type is not a message. That's why, because we are forwarding the step contexts. And the step context still has a activity of type events. This is the token response. Instead, we want to forward the, well, let's just forward the message activity that we have here. And let's do the same for the Lewis. So now instead of doing this, no, the message is not enough. We need to have the context. So we can use the same turn context that we created before. And we cannot do this. We can do that here. We will not be returning anything anymore. And here, neither return text, return text. This is actually beginning the dialog based on that step text. this we can replace. So let's put this in. To handle the case where we do not have any in connected search results. And we can get rid of this because we're not returning anything anymore. If we do want to return dialog, we want to start. So it's a bit quirky. We can do is or and then begin dialog. Let's call it name. And then just push these values. It's a bit creepy. So, I'm gonna refactor this anyway. So to add breaks here, because since we are not returning anymore, switch case will not automatically end. Just the dialog name is not enough. It's gonna be so ugly. So damn ugly.
It's dark out, I sit in bed, I feel asleep, dark in my eyes, still awake this late at
I could also just also
nothing to write. Some say it's difficult to find, and the words they just
feed in the step contexts.
beginning. You woke up, go wanna listen. Is life like this? Pen to paper alone like this? Is this how they'll see me when I'm gone? Then should I dismiss my real thoughts to protect my kids? Or should I let them see my weaknesses? How will they remember me when I'm gone? Should I let them see my weaknesses? How will they remember me when
Now we can rename this back to dialog turn results. Use this again. Let's get rid of it here. And again, use it here.
journals like a link book to my brain. So reach out to cross the gate, 'cause everything I am is safe here in my mind. Someone told me that I couldn't be myself. I would be living more through my doubts.
So just bring it back to what it was. But instead we also feed in the new turn context. Not completely happy with that, but it does its job at the moment. Still have one issue. I can tell here by this red dot. So what is it? Not all code paths. Get rid of the break here. And we also want to throw this in for the default case. Right. Okay. Let's see if it does what we want it to do. Okay. We are running again. Let's start a new conversation. What can I say? And the URL was not correct, so I need to restart the emulator. And this time it will use what I said before the sign in. And while this was fine, if I now ask what can I say, it will start the dialog from the beginning. So let's run through what it's actually doing. And I can show you by setting a couple of breakpoints in all the 3 steps. So it starts again at the beginning of this main dialog, and here we actually store the current activity, which is the activity with the text in it, with what can I say as the text, and we store it in the step context values, and this gets stored in the conversation state. And afterwards we start the OAuth prompt dialog. But we are already signed in. Excuse me. So we get back this token response. And at this point we do not have the original activity anymore, but instead we have this in this case we do have the activity. Alright. So if we are already signed in, we do get the initial activity. Okay, so maybe what we've built is only required if we want to support that situation where we want to have the user sign in and then. Okay, so this step context actually has a context with a message activity. Oh well. Okay, and then we move forward to the command step and where we create the activity and actually do something with what the user said. Okay, well this appears to be working just fine. Who is the SIM of customer? This is triggering a Lewis. So we can get rid of this breakpoint, this one. And this should go to Lewis. Oh, sorry for jumping back and forth. Apparently it's not recognizing it. So let's see. Let's set a breakpoint here. Who is the SIM of customer? Get rid of this breakpoint. We'll get here. So here we have the connected service results, and it has a couple of intents. Let's get the top intent, which is customer engagement manager, and that makes sense because we do not have a registered dialog currently, and it's also not one of the built-in intents that we support, because we support contact details and KSM details, but in this case it's customer engagement manager. And then we should just take intents from the results. So let's fix this. And this should probably always be an array. Let's try this again. Who is the SIM of customer? We try, probably the bot wasn't started yet. This time it is. Well, let's just press F5 and see what it comes up with. In this case, it will show us the intents that it actually detected, and as you can tell, Customer Engagement Manager is by far the most likely intent, which is correct. But since we do not have a dialog set up for it, it will default to this response, and we can obviously make this response more user-friendly in the future. But for now, we'll just stick with this. But actually, we did a lot of hard work that may not even be necessary. Yeah. So what we may want to do is let's commit this version. So that we can make some changes, and if we are not happy with the changes, we can always refer to this commit. So we're not going to store the message, so we're not going to get it here, but instead we're going to check if the current activity is actually a message activity. So if step context activity is our message activity, we move on to the next step, and if it's not, then we'll ask the user what to do. Then we'll probably don't need to do this as well. We do not have to create this dummy turn context, but instead can just use the step context. We're not going to feed the turn context here. So instead we should use the step context here. Let's copy that for easier, some lazy. As well. So basically we've reverted a lot of the workings. What I'm most interested in is to see if after the next because we're ending up here. So the bot is started, so what can I say? So I was already authenticated, so I will get to this parse token, and here we have the original step context, which has a context with an activity with the type message. Then is this an iMessage activity? And it is. And we'll do the next, and then I'm interested to see, is it here still? No, interested in this one. Is it still that's yes, it's still that message activity with text, and from here on you can just continue as usual. Who is the same of customer? Let's get rid of the breakpoints. Alright, so the only difference now is that if I start a new conversation and I say, what can I say? Then it will ask me to sign in. And after, ouch, 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 ouch. Why did it think that it was a message activity? It does not make sense at all. Let's try it again. Hello everyone currently watching. I hope you're enjoying this stream. So we are currently working on a chatbot built using the bot framework. And we are trying to run it in Teams. And right now we are making some modifications to make the authentication flow better for the user. Yeah, so that's what we are trying to do currently. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. If you like what I'm doing here, please hit that follow button and turn on the notifications so that you can always receive a notification when I'm going live again. So for some reason it thinks that this is a message activity. Maybe that's because activity is always, what was this type? It was a Microsoft bot schema activity. Microsoft bot schema activity. Let's check it out here. Schema activity, perhaps it implements all those interfaces. It's partial. The partial does not implement any interfaces. This particular file, but we also have this 50x, and yeah, it implements all these interfaces, so that's not useful. Stop this. So instead we can check activity types message. So we check if the activity type is message, and that should work. Spinning up again. Let's start a new conversation. What can I say? And then we can start the emulator. What can I say? And this time it will ask me what what can do for me, instead of just using what I initially said, which is fine. So if I now ask this, it should come up with the right thing. And now if I ask it again, it will skip the sign in and right away give me the response. Perfect. I prefer this solution because it's simpler and the user just needs to sign in once for a long time, maybe even ever. So I'm fine with it that they need to ask the same question again after they are signed in. So I'll just leave it with that. Alright, so let's sync this. So we're pushing this up to the Git repository within Azure DevOps. And this triggered an build. As you can tell, it's currently building this version. And once this version is built, it will be released to test. And we should be able to test it out. So let's ensure that in our demo tenants, we have set it up to, let's go to the App Studio to edit the manifest. But we've set it up to communicate with the test version. And that looks to be how it's going to this app ID. Let's find that. Oh, yes, here it is. And yes, it's connected to the test version of the bot. Perfect. So once the release completes, we can test it out within Teams. Still building. Let's check out how it's going. Oh, it's completed even. And let's head over to the releases. So it's currently queued for release to test. As you can tell, it just started releasing. We can follow along. We'll just take a few seconds to push up the code to the Azure App Service. if you're interested to learn how we set this up, you can check out any of my previous broadcasts. So over on YouTube, just head over to watchmecode.tv and it'll take you straight to my channel on YouTube. Alright, so it's published. Now we can try this out. So let's go back to the chat. The icon still hasn't refreshed, but anyway, I don't know how long that will take. So I haven't asked anything to this bot. So let's just try, what can I say? Alright, sign in. And as you can see, the button isn't working. That's probably because I forgot to ensure that token.botframework.com is a valid domain. And you set that up in your manifest. So I go back to the App Studio manifest editor, select my app, and down below here, domains and permissions, you need to ensure that now I already forgot what the domain should be. Let's go back for my the link. So it's token.botframework.com. Token.botframework.com. Right, valid domains have been added. Then to enable this, I need to reinstall the app. We can go directly to my bot here, and this time it will work. My demo account is called Harold, so as you can tell, it's now signed in. What can I say? Perfectly. And now if I want to say something again, in the previous version it will say, "Hi, what can I do for you?" again, and then I needed to repeat myself again, but this time it should directly give me the results. Excellent. Just what we were after, so perfect. It's still not recognizing this SEM, and we can fix that by adding a dialog for the SEM. So to do that, we go to the Coco SEM dialog logic app that we created. So let's go back one step. So in this test resource group, I have added a logic app, and that logic app uses a custom connector trigger to actually start a dialog. And as you can tell, it's currently set to the intent for contact details, but we want to change that. And apparently this isn't working as we speak. That's too bad. So why is that? Why can't it retrieve intents? Let's see, how can we quickly debug this thing? Alright, so the easiest way to debug this is to see. So this is our custom connector, but this is not the test version, and I can tell by this blue icon. So let's go to the test version of the custom connector, which has this pink icon, and we can edit it. Actually, oh, it's already going to my test version, to my dev version. That's not supposed to happen. So let's fix that. Therefore, we go to our app service, and we need to copy this URL that will appear here any seconds. There we go, and use that instead. We need to leave off the HTTPS. Now let's update it. And it could not reach my dev version because I'm not running the ngrok tunnel. So this time, not sure if it will pick up. It will work right away, as you can tell. And now we can, now we get the intents that we have configured in Lewis. So let me show you that as well. I go to eu.lewis.ai. Since we are in Europe, that's where our AI models are now located. Then we have this Coco model. And if we look at the build, you can tell here we have 4 intents, and no surprise, those are the same intents that show up here. And we've created an API to retrieve these intents from Lewis in order for them to show up here. So now we select the customer engagement manager, and let's give it a description. Customer engagement manager of a customer. Now if we save this, it will register this a dialog for this particular intent. Now if we but we were testing it in our test tenant, so this doesn't make sense. We need to do it in the Azure subscription for the test tenant. So we go to Company Connect. Here we did not at all have. We can get rid of the tests. And let's add a dialog for the SAM in our demo tenants. Coco SAM dialog. It's the perfect thing with all those different tenants. You need to keep track what you create where. In this case, we did not have a SAM dialog yet created here. Alright, so let's create a new logic app from blank. We also have here the connector. We use the start dialog trigger. It's connected to the same Lewis model, but perhaps also here we have not set up the, because it has its own instance currently of the custom connector. It has this, because we have not certified our connector yet. And as you could tell, it was also pointing to my dev version using the ngrok tunnel. So I've updated it to point to the test version. And this time I should be able to pick the intent from the drop down. Here we go. Ask who is the customer engagement manager. Customer. And the dialog isn't doing anything. We can just trigger it. It will not respond at all. Well, that's fine for now. So we have registered this. Now, if we were to ask the same question, who is the SAM of customer, it will actually do nothing. But if we look at the run history, you can tell we have now a succeeded run. It has triggered this dialog with the UPN. I was expecting the UPN to show up here. We need to look into that. Oh, that's a different trigger. So we get the conversation reference. For example, we can now add a new step to send a message to the user. We need to input the conversation reference, and we can add a particular text. For example, I don't know yet. Please make me smarter. Now this time, let's go back to Teams. If I ask the question, who is the SAM of the customer, it should reply with the text that I entered. And it is, so that's pretty amazing, actually. So now let's actually do some cool stuff and look up the SAM in CRM. So I'll go to Dynamics and yeah, what would I need to do? I do not know yet where we get the SAM from, but we can take a look at where it used to come from in code. And we want to get it out of code and we want to make it reusable through the logic app. So let's see. We had this KSM dialog, which is not only looking up the KSM, but also the CEM, the Customer Engagement Manager. Let's go to look up CRM customer. And it's actually calling another logic app. And the logic app probably lives here. So let's go to probably defined in Nikki. Nikki is the old name of the bot. Before it, we wanted to extend it using logic apps. So here we have the account lookup. We can copy some stuff from there. Give it Can I load? Not yet, probably. Let's try it again. There we go. Now if I click edit, it does a list records. So it's going to look at the in Spark organization for any accounts where the name contains part of the search string. And then for each it will get some more. The users, the owner, and the SEM. So this is what we want to do. And then in this case it will respond an array. In our case we're gonna create, we're gonna send replies. So we're gonna do a list records. Let's jump back. List records. We do not have a connection to Dynamics yet, so let's sign in. And we're actually going to sign in to the InSpark tenant instead. Although we are in our demo tenant here. We do not have a CRM instance, and I do not want to complicate things by also setting up CRM and making sure we have test data. So we're just going to connect to the InSpark tenants, and we're going to use a service accounts to do that. So this is the service accounts for CRM, and let's hope I do not need to have MFA. More information is required. Yes, that was what I was afraid of. And I don't think I have permissions to access CRM, so we're not able to continue. We already create a connection here, so we can test it out. So in Spark Connect, we do not have connection to CRM. In tests, we don't. And Brods probably. So we don't. Oh, that's too bad. So I need to find the person. With the MFA phone and ask him or her to sign in for me. And then we can continue building this connection. So let's do that in the meantime. So I'm gonna wrap it up for today. So we were able today to find a solution to the roadblock that we encountered last Monday, where we wanted to improve the flow of the dialogue, since previously you had to re-enter your intent twice, because it would always run through the OAuth prompt. And well, we have managed to fix that, so that's great. We've published it to the demo tenants, and we have tested it out, and everything seems to work just fine. and we were just trying to build a more complex conversation by fetching some data from CRM, and therefore we would need to have to set up a CRM connection, and I do not have the MFA details, so I will need to get into touch with one of our with the managed services team of InSpark, because they will probably have the MFA MFA account, and they can sign me in so that I can continue working on this. So that's what I'm gonna do in the next couple of days. I'm gonna ensure that we have these connections set up so that we can continue working on this flow next Monday. So please return next Monday on 7 p.m. I'll be here again live. So 7 p.m. Central European time, or I believe it's 4 p.m. Pacific time. So if you are in Europe or if you are in the States, it's somewhere between 4 and 7 in the afternoon. If you want to get a notification, make sure to follow me. Click that follow button and make sure to turn on the notification. Then you will get a reminder when I go live, and we'll continue working on this and make sure that we can create a more complex conversation. So that means that we also need to create more actions for our custom connector, because currently we can only start a conversation and reply to a conversation, but we also want to make it smarter so that we can ask questions to the user, and eventually also want to add more actions where you can proactively send messages to users based on a timer, for example. So that's everything that we're going to do next, since the basis we have covered now, including the authentication and running it in Teams. So check back later. Hope to see you again on Monday. Otherwise, have a good day and have a good couple of days ahead of you. Well, like I said, hope to see you again and have a good day today. Bye.